All right, welcome back to night 3 of the Cyber Pipe Showdown. Night 3 of our tournament. We are chopping the competition down from 8 to 4. It has been a hell of a competition so far. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We are out here in space, as you can see. We had not some asteroids, but some hash-steroids came out here, interfered with our production team. They got it all sorted out. So shout out to Canoplanners. I'm your host, Eli Harrington. Back here with my co-host, Raj and Tech, a.k.a. Raj. Thank you all for being with us, Raj. Hot last 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
We got a monster chat happening on the IG Live right now. So big shout out to Slinger over there and these folks who are talking over there in Torch Talk. Encourage people, check that out later. That'll all be saved. We'll have this all saved. So big shout out. We know it's going down over there as well. So, Raj, we're going to break down our remaining brackets. We're going to reveal the winners. Spoiler alert, we had at least one that was decided by one vote in the last minute. So the competition has been crazy, very tight right up until the end. Before we show that, and then after that, we've got an amazing interview with Hickory Glass that I was very happy to do earlier this week. So big shout out to Hickory. Before we get into the actual bracket itself, give us a little bit sort of what you've been seeing unfold throughout the week. Kind of trends. I mean, this is the Cyber Pipe Showdown. This is not the Pipe Classic.
Yeah.
That'll be coming back, but this event really just keeps kind of growing growing into its own. So, what have you been noticing this week?
Well, as far as trends go, today broke the trend. So far, we've seen pretty one-sided, like people who took an initial lead held that lead throughout the remainder of the day. Today, the last 24 hours, the competitors have just been taking turns climbing over each other in votes. And today, the last 24 hours was just super exciting to watch how these votes have been coming together and how hard everyone's been campaigning. And
a huge shout out to Glass Torch Technologies and Moodmats, our presenting sponsors, making this all possible. Tonight, our Bracket Breakdown Live is actually brought to us by WILLIES Wood. So, you folks have seen these beautiful, sustainable dabbers. We talk about all this gorgeous glass, all these beautiful products that we're using with it. So, WILLIES Wood, a big shout out, great supporter of the scene up here in the Northeast. Former roommate of mine during a previous Pipe Classic, so special shout out to WILLIES Wood. I haven't seen every sponsor in their underwear, but appreciate you throwing down here, Willie. So thank you very much. We'll be showing off these beautiful dab tools even more throughout here. So, Raj, we have got our Sunset Lake CBD bracket that we're going to get into. And again, we started with 8 competitors. We are down to our final 4. So I know that we've got some video for folks. You've got some analysis. We're going to put it all up here on the screen in our space station floating around here, break it down. So with that being said, it's time for the bracket breakdown. All right, and so big shout out again to WILLIES Wood for making this bracket breakdown possible. You folks can see at theburngallery.com, Sunset Lake CBD, also sponsoring this bracket all week. So, huge shout out. We're going to start on what is for you folks the top left as you're looking at the screen here. This one, we were talking about this Hoobs piece a lot yesterday. We're going to talk about it a lot more tomorrow. I just want to say if you haven't gone and watched these competitor videos yet, do so immediately, because you're going to learn something about these pieces every day and notice another detail. So, Raj, we talked about Blossom, amazing showing last year, really strong showing this year with beautiful, clean, tight work. But, we saw Hoobs, really, really strong piece here.
absolutely. And Blossom Glass, definitely since last year. I think last year she made a Sherlock, and this year she made this beautiful full-size rig here. And I believe she mentioned that it was actually her second rig, which is a great thing, if you can recognize your own weaknesses and say, you know what, this isn't as good as I can do, and then take the time to do it again. That's a great sign that you want to see in a competitor. And so let's pull up the clip of her working actually. And like Blossom's color work is some of the best in the industry. So it really surprised me that she's working on a Carlisle, which a lot of times can, deteriorate some of the colors, and you may not get quite the pop that she gets. So, as we've been talking about the past couple of days, the relationship that an artist has with their equipment, she must be running some interesting pressures or something to be able to, work the glass the way she does and with that Carlisle.
Mm. And, another good chance to mention our competitors, this is a competition. Folks are making these pieces for this competition specifically. Not all of them made it through. We had a lot of folks who got disqualified, going a little too hard in the paint, in the glass, on the torch, and were not able to complete. So, we see these folks, you might have practiced this piece a bunch of times before, but once you actually have those time constraints, life happens as well.
Yeah.
And while this one is not happening upstairs at the Burn Gallery, like the Pipe Classic coming back next year, they are still under time constraints even when folks are working at their home studios, where they're more comfortable. So that was a great matchup. Hoobs, just cruising through right now. We see that piece. The Sherlock in the trunk, that's something we didn't mention before. I know we're going to talk about that piece more tomorrow night as well. But our other matchup here on the left side, this is one that was extremely close all day.
I was watching this the entire day. This is the one that I really had my eye on. And I believe Nady pulled away here at the end. And, well-deserved. That piece is phenomenal. It's big, it's got the color, it's got the function, it's got the concept. He came strong on all fronts.
Yeah, this piece, went back and watched the video before, and we were looking at this, called the Painter's Pipe. You can see that paintbrush, there's actually invisible paper. So you can actually dip that in water and actually write on that palette.
Yes, yes.
So amazing on that canvas, so every kind of function, just an amazing piece.
Yeah,
so,
multiple levels of art. Meta
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, we've been looking at this KT Scissor Baby piece all week, just really statuesque,
Yes.
eye-catching, and we've talked about the technique that it takes to pull this piece off, too.
Yeah, the thing that really caught me, and can we pull up that image? How she sculpted those thighs. It's just really believable, which is,
Yeah.
I just love that,
Dumps like a
the
truck.
muscle structure.
Truck.
Yeah.
No, I think that really this is like actual, when we talk about the kind of sculpting and looking at these different forms, right? This is really doing sculpting in this glass medium in kind of a classical form.
Yeah.
So, we joke, but that human figure is something that's really difficult to do.
It is, because, if your eye is trained to recognize, things that look human but that aren't quite human, whatever survival instincts are back there in our brains. And so it's much harder to convince the public that this is what you've made when it's something recognizable. If it's some sort of abstract creature, it's like, okay, well, that's an abstract creature.
Right.
When it's a human form, it's way more difficult.
Absolutely. And, we'll see. This will be, a real heavyweight and be really interesting to see. We'll have Hoobs facing off against Nady Love. This will be in our final matchup, which voting is now open. We see votes already coming in at theburngallery.com. Encourage folks to go over there and check it out. Big shout out to everybody in the chat over there on YouTube. We've got competitors in there. I know Scissor Baby's in there. Congratulations making this far. Joe Morrison, amazing piece.
Yep.
Love that guitar. So thank you everybody who's out there. Glyph Glass, Scissor Baby, Josh Davis. I know we've got folks over on the Facebook side as well. So
there was something interesting I noticed about the way Nady did his pull. Can we pull up that clip? He didn't stack his vac stack with just one straight color. He used two colors halfway mounted in there so that he was able to, because he needed so many different variations of colors, and so this was his way of sort of shaving down on his workload, basically by half,
right,
in order to get two different types of colors out of one pull. That was a great move.
That's the kind of analysis that you don't get everywhere, folks, and this is why we've got Rajan_Tech on Instagram. Raj, our guy on the inside, helping us break this down and analyze this. So, this is something for competitions, a technique for people to take out.
Sure,
because
or if
when
you're
we're
short
really
on material.
Limited, absolutely. Yeah, so the efficiency, and we know so many of these bios, you read the bio of all these different artists, they've been in here dozen years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, a lot of experience, a lot of OGs, a lot of skill out there being displayed. And this is part of the benefit for other folks who are out there, other artists, get to see some of these sort of tricks and hacks
Exactly.
that their peers are using. So, shout out to Nady Love. Moving on against Hoobs. That'll be a huge matchup tomorrow night.
Epic.
And a reminder that tonight we talk about epic glass blowers. We talk about our friends here in Vermont, where we're broadcasting from. Hickory Glass. We've got an extended interview with Hickory Glass. We are going to get to that in a couple minutes. Before we do, let's look at the right side of this bracket. As we go over, we see that Sunset Lake CBD logo right in the middle. Thank you again to them for holding us down. This is the one we were all watching.
Yeah.
Subliminal and Ducks Glass. We're literally right up until 6:29, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time waiting for this. One vote decided this, as people can tell. So your vote really does matter here. Congratulations to both competitors. Really a lot of campaigning done. Ducks was all over the place on Instagram, shouting it out, shouting the competition out. We appreciate that a ton. But Subliminal pulled away at the very, very last second.
Yeah, and my favorite thing about this is that they both played into this new gold plating technique. I've only really seen it in the last year, maybe 2 years. So it's not widely adopted yet. I don't think a lot of people even know how it's done. But Ducks gave us a little bit of a insight into it. Can we pull up that Ducks working video? Yeah, I think this is the part where he's baking on this gold, and it looks like he's ramping that temperature up pretty high. And I know that these sorts of chemicals and things that you use to achieve these effects, sometimes they can be pretty dangerous. So, all these glass blowers throughout their entire working careers are putting themselves at risk in their respiration, with their eyes. It is a little bit of a self-sacrifice to even be in the field.
That's a good point, and especially when we talk about new techniques, new materials, pushing the limits, all these, sort of new technology that's evolving in real time with the art, and certainly with the sport aspect of it here as well. So, again, a big shout out to Subliminal, big shout out to Ducks Glass. We went into some detail with that piece. We saw that video yesterday that actually featured the shark jaw on the table. Beautiful representation.
Yeah, and on the Subliminal side, let's pull up that clip of him. And that grip is so phenomenal. The shapes on it are very organic, but deliberate and believable. And just phenomenal job on that front grip. I can't stop admiring that.
No, I mean, it really does look, you see, especially when you see the full size of the piece.
Yeah.
You get a sense for the amount of work it took. And really just the replication of, what looks to be an old school Tommy gun.
Yeah.
Right, with the round with the barrel magazine on there.
I think he said it's within like a 3/16 of accurate scale. Like, that's
really?
That's a really good attention to detail.
Well, and like you said, that wood grain on the stock. That's the kind of thing, the amount of time that it takes to prepare that, to make that. All the engraving that we see on the magazine, on the lever itself.
Yeah.
All along the rail there up top.
I mean, speaking of wood grain, we got hickory later. And there's been a lot of different renditions of wood over the years. And this is like one of the best ones anybody's ever seen here.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at it as just one component of this larger piece.
Exactly.
Which we also mentioned too, one thing about this, that it actually has a mouthpiece on the trigger side instead of on the barrel side.
Yeah.
So, it's a little more, I don't know what the message is there, kind of the difference between one or the other. But something that's different, because it is a little morbid, like you said, if you're always having to, put the piece.
Yeah.
It's the other way. So, this was our last matchup of the night. We had Tammy Baller moving on past Duran Glass here. This was another one that was extremely close. We were watching this all day. Tammy effin' Baller, for the sake of the stream. Keep it PG here with the name. But Tammy Baller's piece, we'll talk about this a lot more because it is really a never-ending story of details and talent that it took to make that. But this Duran Glass piece, we got into a little bit last night talking about it, seeing the hull and the networking that it took to make that, seeing the detail in the motor itself, having a ball hitch on there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive into that motor for a second.
Okay.
Can we pull up that clip? So on the motor, it looks like he's gotten, 420 horsepower on there. Really appreciate that. But that motor is removable as a dry piece. And that brings me to another concept, which is all the pieces here have to be functional to some degree. And we saw it here and in the hoops piece that they made a dry piece, and that gets us by the technical requirements of it. And it seems like as pipe classics are progressing, and I think maybe it has something to say towards the appreciation for the art, that people seem to weigh the function less and less.
Yeah, that is a great piece of analysis, because we have noticed that, and I mean, it's also a big part of the Cyber Pipe Showdown versus the Pipe Classic, right?
Yeah.
When we're all looking at this in 2D, and we can't actually feel that pressure when we take a dry hit, or feel that recycler or see that action in person, you don't judge as much. But I think that's really interesting analysis, Raj, and it makes a ton of sense. But we also are seeing these pieces that are moving on, and Tammy Baller's a great example, that are full sets.
Exactly.
And you see this in competitive pipe making a lot. I think about Hick Dog, who's got like 8 pieces in one major piece. And something like the Tammy Baller piece here, the Never Ending Story, that really, even if you look the two Sphinx, the oracles, one of them is a rig, one of them's a bong.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, that broad utility and having a lot of different pieces that all can work together at the same time or themselves individually, it's also big for collectability too, right?
Yeah. And when we look at some of these competitors as sort of, what sort of competitor are they? Are they a technical one? Are they a fundamentalist? And Tammy has always been a conceptual competitor.
Yeah.
She brings story, she brings character, she brings life, she brings an energy to all her pieces that's very infectious and easy to digest.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the reasons that she kills it every year.
Absolutely correct. And shout out to Tammy over there in Maine. Appreciate folks representing the Northeast. Can't wait to have her back. Staple here at Pipe Classic. Like you said, just the motion that's in those pieces, right? I mean, like you said, you're really put into the middle of the story, and that's something that's hard to convey, with glass a lot of the time. So, congratulations to Tammy Baller. She's going to be moving on. We are down to our final 4. So, really, really important to go vote right now. Again, your vote is going to count more and more. The voting is getting easier and easier as you only have a couple votes to cast. But we are down to our semifinals, our final 4. Going to be down to our final 2 tomorrow night. Just looking ahead, we want to make sure to tell folks to tune in. Tomorrow, Raj has got an amazing interview with the folks from Glass Torch Technologies. Thank you to them, as well as Moodmats, again, our presenting sponsors here. We're really excited about that. We also have been having Instagram lives all week. We had one tonight, which, we've got Tito from the Burn Gallery here. He's just been going nuts, loving this chat. So a big shout out to Slinger over there in the chat, and to Torch Talk.
Yes, Mike Mason,
one of our sponsors. We appreciate you both over there. It sounded like a hoot. Everybody having a ton of fun.
I'm going to check that out later for sure.
Oh, absolutely. We want to go back and watch, and same thing, invite people to come back here for the breakdown, especially of these different pieces. So, we have got a special feature for folks tonight. I had a chance to talk to a legend in the pipe game, Hickory Glass. Just such a true OG.
Yeah, Pipe Classic champion.
Pipe Classic champion, represents Vermont. Just really quality person. And we talked a lot about kind of origins, about finding your style, finding your voice, about competitive pipe making. Really a lot of practical advice for other torch workers, other pipe makers, about how you find that balance between commercial pipe making, competition, artistry, and how you can do this and actually have a long career. Now he's so talented, it's probably easy to give advice, when you have that kind of talent backing you up.
Yeah. I mean, I've known him for years, and, everyone's felt ebbs and flows in the industry. And the way he's structured, like you said, the balance that he's found, it seems that no matter what happens in the industry, like his boat keeps moving. It's like a big rock in the wind. Like nothing's blowing it around.
Solid,
It's
strong,
solid.
like
Yes.
hickory.
Yes.
Right? Well, a big shout out again to tonight's Bracket Breakdown live sponsor, Willie's Wood. We're going to go ahead and maybe get something heady set up here while we go ahead and watch this hickory interview. Encourage you to do the same thing. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, share it with other folks, get the word out there. Having a blast doing this all week. We got a couple more nights leading up to the big award. But a big shout out to our friends Willie's Wood for taking care of us tonight, keeping us dabbing nice and healthy, proper, enjoying our full effects, including our glass and products. So without further ado, let's kick it over and check out that interview with Hickory Glass.
I've been making pipes long before I started making glass pipes. And, you know, way back, I mean, we were making stone pipes and antler pipes. I did a lot of carving of stone too. So I was doing like peace pipe kind of things. I got into bamboo, where I was making like steamrollers and doing wood burnings on bamboo steamrollers.
This
And
is
so-
way beyond like aluminum can. This is beyond like aluminum can, beer can. I assume you have that in the repertoire too at that time, right?
Didn't we all? Yeah, you know, we did what we had to do to get the job done, you know, and I got into making pipes of all different kinds and selling them, mostly on dead lot, later on fish lot. And, you know, when I saw glass come around, I mean, I knew that I've watched glass blowers do sort of the carnival glass thing before, and I was really intrigued by that. And some of my friends were taking the Bob Snodgrass class out west, and they come back and they were blowing glass and doing stuff and kind of watching over their shoulder and seeing what they had going on. And finally, you know, I got the opportunity to take a class with my friend and took a pendant class. Basically just went down, and this was 20 years ago now, and did pendants, and then did that for a little bit. I made the investment, bought myself a torch, bought a kiln, bought all the glass, put it all on a credit card, and started working it full time, just 60 hours a week, you know, just all the time, day and night. And had the credit card paid off in a month, and just kept rolling, you know, kept doing it. I think that it was a lot easier for people back then to kind of get into the game because, you know, production was selling really, really well. I mean, you could make stuff pretty much anything and you were going to sell it. And
maybe you can give a little, like, I think a lot of folks make, you know, if you've seen like Degenerate or, you know, or any of the Snodgrass documentaries, like that lot scene really was the beginning of everything. And like you said, you know, glass really was kind of an innovation at the time, right? Never mind kind of heady glass and things getting more and more elaborate, but this is all pre-internet too, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Pre-glass pipes, pre-MySpace, you know, pre-color. I mean, it was kind of like
and
cobalt.
People were really just, you're either smoking a joint or you were smoking like out of like a metal, like plumber pipe, right?
Exactly,
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah. And metal and wood and stone and antler, you know. So yeah, I mean, it caught my eye. I thought, man, this is, you know, that's just so cool. I just want to be a part of that, and just dove in head first, pretty much, and you know, really fell in love with it, and didn't really realize that it was going to become my guide through life. I mean, the last 20 years, it's been what I've been doing, and I never looked back. Really, it's been a great journey.
Those early days too. I mean, I think something that I think a lot of folks, it's easy to take for granted now, and especially, you know, we're doing this whole online talking about this on Facebook, you know, which is crazy. And you see glass on Netflix, and, you know, cannabis is legal in so many places, you know, which you couldn't even say, you know, marijuana in a head shop for, you know, for whatever decades, right?
Right.
but there really was, and again, I keep referencing degenerate art because it's such a seminal piece and easy way for people to get a little snapshot. But like that sense of kind of outlaw culture, too, that was part of it, and sort of, what kind of was functional glass getting sort of any respect in the art scene, and kind of people who were pushing the envelope, kind of how did you find out about each other, and sort of how did it start to evolve from just production to like, hey, now we can actually taste what we're smoking, into something that was more of like an actual, art form. Because I kind of see it similar to like graffiti in that way, like becoming more of its own art form.
Well, I think glasspipes.org really helped the industry a lot. I mean, people were able to share what they were making and get inspired by other people's works. There really wasn't that shared thing happening, and besides going down to the lot and seeing what other people were making, maybe going to glass shops and seeing what they were getting in. But even back then, I mean, it was very limited on what the glass shops had. Not a lot of inspirational pieces, and where the incentive to create those large pieces, it was there sort of. I mean, you could kind of get rid of some things when you made them, but a lot of times you'd make these really big elaborate pieces and they'd sit on your shelf for months. And that's still how it is in a lot of ways, for a lot of people. And we do a craft most of the time. I mean, I personally, the glass has become a craft most of the time for me, and occasionally I get to express my art through it. And I guess that's kind of what we're going to be touching on, is finding that balance between the craft and the art. And it's been a difficult balance for sure, because you still got to pay the bills, but yet you still want to be able to have fun and express yourself. So I think that you can find a balance. And the nice thing about doing production is you can put your heart into it while your mind is kind of other places. And you can still make the best piece you can possibly make, but it's the song you've played many times before, in a sense. I kind of think of it as music in a sense. It almost is like music. And an artist that creates music, they're not always out there writing a new song every time they pick up the guitar. They're playing the same song that they've played many times before, and they're perfecting that song and getting it better and better and better. And occasionally do like an improv jam with the same song. And that's kind of what we can do with glass. We can do the same glass piece and then occasionally throw an improv jam on there.
That's a great analogy, because it is, it's a perfect analogy, because it's also part of it is that you kind of got to get your 10,000 hours too, right? I mean, to really be able to make something like, you're probably not going to go in the studio the first or second time and, blow people's minds. Right. With something out of nowhere. Like, you have to be comfortable enough with the basics to be able to make what you're thinking of, and then be able to innovate off of that. So, if you don't spend those hundreds, thousands of hours, like you said, playing those chords, practicing your chords, or playing that, stairway, whatever, a million times, making that spoon, then you're not going to be able to take it and push those limits, right?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. And, I mean, somebody gave me a piece of advice a long time ago. My good buddy, Jay Pills, who I first took my lesson from, he said, spend the week blowing the stuff that you know how to do. Do that every day, bust it out, do the things you know how to do. But then one day a week, do something you never done before and push your limits and try that thing that you never done. And that way you're always going to be making the money, and you're always going to be progressing. And I think it was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever had. And I give it out to people when I meet new artists, and, they say, what can I do? And I said, well, do what you know, and then expand yourself also, take that day or that time, even if it's not every week, if it's just every couple of weeks or every month, even, to push your limits, to try something you've never done before. And really, that's what this competition is doing for people. It's allowing them to just blow their minds up and think about what they possibly can do with all of the knowledge that they've gained so far. They're not going out and necessarily doing something like reinventing the wheel. They're just going out and pulling from all their different tools that they've acquired to produce this thing that is capable.
Yeah.
Capable.
Well, and it's like, you think about back in the day going to a gallery or going to a show and seeing different artists work and being like, oh, how did they do that? Or this person did that, how can I incorporate that or do this, right? That's another big part of this, is showcasing all these different artists and sort of, their technique of doing this type of lattice work or this type of stained glass style or whatever it was,
Right.
So I'm curious about sort of finding your style, right? Because I mean, in glass, you have people who have such sort of distinctive, iconic styles. You're one of those people, who people recognize your piece. And, clearly you mentioned antlers a bunch. We see your background there. You're out in the woods, like you really are that hickory, that hickory personified. But sort of how did you find that, and sort of, what advice do you give to artists about trying to find the thing? Because it's like, is somebody going to become the giraffe person or the dichrome person or the, whatever sort of it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
kind of, how can people develop that and find that, and.
Well, I think it does kind of go back to that repetition thing. It comes down to, like you were saying, you look at a piece and you say, wow, how was that done? And then you try to figure out how that was done. And then once you figured it out, you add that to your toolbox, so you've got like all these different tools that you can draw from to create a piece. So the more techniques you can acquire, the more you can incorporate that into your finished piece. So that's part of it. I think it's interesting. I think glass, a lot of art mediums are able to absorb the artist, but I think glass really can absorb the artist, if you know what I mean. It's sort of, when you're creating something, it's absorbing a piece of you. It's absorbing your energy. So if you can allow it to do that, and if you can allow the glass to move in a way that is not necessarily natural, because you can do unnatural things to glass and really create an amazing piece. But it does have the ability to sort of absorb your personality. And so, what do you like? What do you love? What piece do you want to make that you would love to have in your pocket? Or, when you go on a hike and you bust it out and you're smoking, what do you want to have with you? Because that's the piece that you have to make too. You got to make the stuff you love and the stuff you would like to have. And I think it helps to be a smoker. It helps to have that knowledge. I think if you're getting in the game and you just want to be a pipe maker and you really don't really care about pot or cannabis or whatever, you might not create the best pieces for people.
A lot of flower vase enthusiasts, aren't out there in the functional glass scene.
It's they're not quite going to get it. I think when it comes to the function of a piece, for me, it's function first, really. I mean, I very rarely make a piece that isn't function first. It's really about like having something that's just going to be that daily driver for people, or something that they, their go-to piece, or something to also take pride in having as a display piece. But it's got to be functional too for me. So I've always had that in my mind while I'm making things.
Yeah, I mean, well, and the competitions, that's such its own specific kind of discipline too, right? Because you have to plan something out. You got to bring all your own stuff in. You got to do it on a specific time, constraint. Like, it really is sort of its own. And this one, the Cyber Pipe, different from Pipe Classic. There's more time. You can use your own shop, right? Like, you have a lot of advantages.
Huge advantage. Yeah, huge advantage. And time too.
It is entirely different, right?
Oh, entirely different. Yeah. I mean, having your own studio space to, your own shop to make your piece in is huge. I mean, when you step into a foreign studio, there's a lot that changes. And, that's a huge part of the Pipe Classic, being the time constraints, the 12 hours, the two six hour days. You got to make it all fit in that time. So you can't do too much. You got to know that you're going to be able to make that. And then you got to also know you're going to pull it off, because so many pieces have been attempted and failed, and they would have probably won if they'd have actually pulled it off, so you do have to actually pull it off too.
Right.
So, that's part of it. That's all part
Yeah,
of the game.
you gotta shoot there, and then you gotta find that place where you can actually land it.
Yeah, yeah, right.
What is what does it mean for you, and kind of what's next for you? I mean, people have sort of seen your style evolve over the years and incorporate things like the birch, and now sort of the mushrooms I see more in there, and kind of the fungus sort of what are you thinking about next, and more competition, sort of different kind of pieces, and even here in Vermont where we've got recreational adult use cannabis coming down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm continually growing and learning, and I get inspired. A lot of times these competitions really inspire me. I mean, I've been thinking about my Pipe Classic piece for 2 years now, and now I got to wait 1 more year. So I'm thinking about another year for what I'm going to create, a year from now. It's great. I mean, there's not much has pushed me more than the competitions have. Even before I was in the competitions, I was watching people do them, and just getting so inspired and seeing these techniques and being like, wow, if I did that, and I can do this with it and change that and make that into my thing. That I get inspired by people's work all the time. And there's more things that I want to learn. There's techniques that I want to push myself to do. That in the next year, I'm going to try some things that I've never done before. It just not necessarily reinventing things, but maybe how, the way I go about it, the way I do stuff, especially how it's going to help in a competition setting, with builds and whatnot. It's, I don't think I'm going to stray from what I do. I do what I do, and
Yeah.
I love that part of it. And I think the recognition of a piece, looking at a piece and saying, oh, that's a hickory for sure, but I can see the differences. I can see the work in that, and it almost looks like a collab. Who did he collab with? I kind of I like that sort of a vibe to a piece,
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with people a little bit of insight, and kind of last parting shots as far as the recorded part here. Advice for people who are, competitors who are coming up. I thought what you said before about spending 1 day doing something totally different, and, the rest of the time, the difference between craft and artistic pursuit, and then putting competitions in there. Advice to, folks who are competitors, who are, up and coming pipe makers, future competitors. What do you sort of want to leave that community, or those folks with?
Well, it's funny, everybody approaches it differently. And I see people show up to the competition, and they say, oh, I've been thinking about it while on the drive over here on what I'm going to make, and they literally show up to the Pipe Classic with very little idea of what they're going to do. And they're kind of just been drawing it up over the last couple of days. I can't do that. I think I spend at least about a month's worth of work preparing for a Pipe Classic, in the practicing the techniques that I'm going to incorporate, in making a practice piece or two, or more, and then trying to pull, figuring out the time constraints. That's a really big deal. If you, I think the best thing, people handle it their own ways, but being prepared and practicing those things ahead of time, so you can step up there, and then when your torch is lit, you're doing the same thing you've done before, and you're just going to do that thing again. I find that to be a real advantage in the competition.
All right, welcome back to the Cyber Pipe Showdown. Big thank you again to Hickory Glass for taking a bunch of time to speak with me. Got to get a sense of his inspiration, see his shop there, en plein air, in the middle of nature. Big shout out to the chat over there. Joe Morrison, Torch Talk. If you didn't see the Torch Talk interview with Slinger, go back and watch it. It's going to be on IG. We're going to be checking it out later on. But a big shout out to Torch Talk. We've got Joe Morrison in there, Josh Davis, BDNF guy. I know that we had, let's see, who else do we have in there earlier? We had Casey Glass in there too, Samantha, Josh. So, as a reminder, we're going to be doing this 2 more nights starting at 6:30 p.m. Tomorrow, we've got a special behind-the-scenes interview. Raj, you want to tease it a little bit? Tell the folks who you talked to?
Well, we sat down, we talked with Willie and Wally of Glass Torch Technologies, and we went way back to, you know, the time that they were kids, and worked our way forwards, and, you know, we went pretty deep on that origin story. So
we're gonna actually
yeah.
pull behind the curtain. You know, I mean, Glass Torch Technology is huge in this community, in our community, sponsoring this event along with Moodmats. You're actually gonna get to see these folks. Raj had to go all the way to Pennsylvania to do this interview. Didn't cheat like Hickory and myself, hopping on with the teleconference. So, we mentioned earlier, pulled it out before, WILLIES Wood. Beautiful dab tool. You folks can check these out. We really appreciate Willie and WILLIES Wood sponsoring tonight's Bracket Breakdown Live. You folks saw we had Magic Man, who sponsored that Instagram live chat. And we've got another Instagram live tomorrow. That one's going to be at 3 o'clock. That's with AKM Glass. And that one's going to be brought to us by Fat Guy Edibles, who is definitely another hometown favorite. So cannot wait to be back with Fat Guy Edibles. You know, Hickory hanging out upstairs, eating some ice cream together, one Willie's dabber spoonful at a time. So, want to give a shout out before we sign off here to our sponsors who make this possible. We talked about Glass Torch Technologies and Moodmats, but we got a whole host of other people. Vermont Cannabis Solutions, keeping us out of legal trouble. Glass Vegas, Glass Alchemy, Flow Magazine, you know, helping us keep the stoke along here with Torch Talk. Really appreciate all your support there, Mike. IASO Goods, Sunset Lake CBD. You've seen them on the bracket all week. The Men's Pipe Show, as well as Green State Gardener, and once again, the aforementioned Fat Guy Edibles. So, a big thank you again to all of those businesses. Follow these artists, follow these businesses, give them a like, follow them on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. Helps us, helps keep this competition going. Cyber Pipe Showdown has been wild so far this year. We've had close votes. We've had a ton of action. All these drops, all these live scenes. It's just continuing to grow and grow. So thank everybody out there for being a part of it. Like, subscribe, share, vote, spread the word. I am once again your host, Eli Harrington, signing off here. My co-host, Rajan Tech from the beautiful Burn Gallery out here in space. Once again saying thank you. And as always, may the best pipe win.